All right, now in order for me to calculate opportunity cost, I have to take a look at the two options that I'm faced with in any given scenario. So let's say, for example, that Friday night's coming up. I've got a job as a busboy at a restaurant. This is what I had to face when I was in high school. I didn't make this much money, but let's say that working as a busboy, I make $10 per hour. Okay, that'd be pretty good. And normally I would work, let's say, how about an 8-hour shift? All right, so that means that in one night of bussing tables, I could make $80. Right? So that's my one option. I can work and make $80. Now, on the other hand, let's say that I could go out and spend a night with friends. So I could say one night out with friends. Let's say I go to a movie, go shopping, grab dinner, whatever it might be. Let's just say that it cost me $50. Right? So I could either spend $50 or I could make $80. But when I'm trying to make my decision, if I choose to go out, I'm not just spending $50. I'm losing the opportunity to make $80 as well, which means that if I were to put these numbers together, I'm not going to really add because I know there's a negative here, but that means that together these numbers represent $130. I can either go work for 8 hours, keep the $50 that's in my pocket, and I'll have $130. Or I can go out, spend the $50 in my pocket, I don't make that $80 because I'm not going to work, so I'm going to be out a total of $130. This is the number that we need to consider when we're trying to make decisions. Do I keep $130, make $130, or do I lose both the actual and opportunity to have $130? So whenever you're faced with a question that asks between two decisions and there's numbers attached, you have to think about both sides, not just one side. You have to think about both sides when making that decision. Let's take a look using a slightly more elaborate example about my education choices, my career choices. Let's say that I'm really interested in medicine and I'm debating or whether or not I go into nursing or if I go to become a doctor. Just to make numbers easy to use, let's say that becoming a nurse takes 4 years, becoming a doctor takes 8 years. Nursing tuition is a little bit less expensive than going for a medical doctor degree. So I would multiply $20,000 times 4, means that this total degree would cost me $80,000. Likewise, if I were to, this is how much money I actually spend, right? So that's $80,000. Now on the other side, becoming a medical doctor means that I'm going to end up spending $40,000 a year for 8 years. This degree is going to cost me $320,000. That's a lot of money. I'm looking at the options and I'm like, well, I could save so much more money if I become a nurse rather than become a doctor. However, there's more that I have to factor into my decision. If I become a nurse, I'll start working 4 years sooner than if I become a doctor. If I'm making $80,000 a year times those 4 years that I'd be working, I'm going to end up making, whatever that is, was that $320,000? Yep, $320,000. So I could go become a nurse, spend $80,000, and then make $320,000 before I'm even done getting a medical doctorate degree, right? Now, the problem, or I guess the unfortunate side for the medical doctor degree, is that I need to take into account the fact that I'm not going to make that $320,000. And I'm spending $320,000 to get the degree. It's like a double whammy. That means that if I'm analyzing my total cost of becoming a doctor compared to becoming a nurse, I end up spending, this equals, $640,000 in actual and lost income to become a medical doctor. That's a lot of money. And if I were to look at it, right, this cost me $80,000 and I could make $80,000 a year. This cost me $640,000, but I would only be making $185,000. Let's assume that I'm going to work for 35 years in either field. Or I guess, let's say I work for 35 years after as a medical doctor. Technically, that means I can work 39 years as a nurse, right? Because I have 4 extra years where I can go work rather than being a doctor. Let's just keep the numbers even like that. If I were to go work as a nurse for 39 years and I was making an average of $80,000 a year, I'm going to make, so we multiply these, I'm going to make $3,120,000. $20,000 rather, $3,120,000. If I were to do this as a doctor, I would make $185,000 on average times 35 years, means I would make $6,475,000. Okay, so this is how much I would make just from these brackets right here. Now, I need to factor in the total cost of getting to this point. As a nurse, I spent $80,000 in tuition, which means that I'm going to end up, overall, my net gain is going to be $3,120,000 minus $80,000. So this includes the cost of my degree. That means that I'm going to end up with $40,000, sorry. Keep doing that. Now, we know that it's more expensive for me to become a doctor. I have to pay more in tuition, and I'm not making $320,000 as a nurse for 4 years, so my total cost is $640,000. So I have to subtract $640,000 from what I would make as a doctor, because I've lost the opportunity to make a substantial amount of money in the meantime. I'm going to now subtract $640,000 from $6,475,000, which is what I could make as a doctor for 35 years. Sorry, I almost subtracted the wrong number, 640,000. All right, that means that I'm going to end up overall with $5,835,000. Gosh, keep doing that. All right. Now I want to look at the difference between these two numbers. If I become a medical doctor, I'm going to end up making, if you subtract the nursing salary from what I can make as a doctor, I will end up making $2,795,000 more as a doctor than as a nurse. So let's assume that I'd be just as happy doing either one of these careers, right? I'd be just as happy doing either one of these careers, and that I would have, the same value, the same excitement, all of that stuff. So everything's going to remain constant. I'm just looking at the numbers. It is in my financial best interest to become a doctor rather than a nurse, because at the end of the day, even though it's going to cost me a lot more money, my benefit is going to be much larger than if I were to just say as a nurse. So when you come up against a problem that's going to ask you to weigh two options, I have to calculate what I could gain from each choice, how much I'm actually going to spend on each choice, and I need to evaluate when I could start working. So that way I can figure out, well, I could make $320,000 doing this for 4 years, but I can't do that over here. That's my opportunity cost, and I add that in to come up with the overall cost of becoming a doctor. Go ahead and try this out on the quiz.